Thank you for staying with Citizen Extra with me, Lillian Muli. The U.S. has cut back $2 billion health support over graft claims. The country is currently facing a $5 billion health scandal. The U.S. government has suspended financial support worth nearly $2.1 billion to the Ministry of Health due to corruption. My guest in studio this morning, Maureen Morenga, she's a health advocate, and Gabriel Muthuma, who is a governance analyst. The government, good morning. The government has previously denied these allegations, but indeed this is not the first time we're hearing the U.S. coming out to say that monies that have been pushed towards supporting health projects in the country have not been accounted for. Is this a manifestation of what is actually currently happening within the Ministry of Health? Let's start with you, Gabriel.
Thank you, Lillian. I think we've all, and we'll all agree to quite an extent, that we have issues with what I would call systemic problems. And this is not the first time, as you've alluded to, this is not the first time that we are hearing another government raise questions as to how we are prepared in matters governance and how we are prepared in matters accountability. So this does not come as a shock to me when the United States has actually suspended the $2.1 billion. Question is, what is being done at the moment? We've had, actually we've heard from USAID, we've heard from the government itself, through the PS yesterday, and also the press statement that they made. What I actually would like to connote on what I've had is that there are things that are going on. The things that are going on, as we've heard from the U.S. ambassador saying that they are looking into ensuring that this suspension does not take more time than necessary, because they are working with the Ministry of Health officials to ensure that the systems which are weak and their cake and legacy systems are scrapped, and they are putting into the realization of accountable systems that can give the United States and USAID the comfort that they need to move on with this program.
And Maureen, we know that the move is likely to hurt outreach and training programs by the ministry, but the ministry has downplayed this cut, describing it as a small portion of overall U.S. health funding. But from where you sit, what is the role of the funding in the health sector? Will this support affect direct support to patients?
Thanks, Lillian. I think it's not about the amounts, but it's about the issue, about the what has happened. And we know very well that with every donor who gives money deserves accountability, and they seek for accountability. For the USA to take this action, they must have had previous discussions with the government, and this was not done. Financial accountability has been an issue in the health sector. We have talked about it. There's a time when the news released information about some money lost and accountability not being straightforward. As civil society, we wrote to the government. We did not get an answer. But I think this is just a show that our government needs to step up, fight against corruption. We need to be more accountable to resources, not only the donors' resources, but the citizens' resources as well. This is one step that shows that as a country, we need to step up our role in monitoring what is meant to be used in public service, and not only in health, but in other sectors. It is also a warning that as a government and as citizens, corruption will not only affect our lives, but it will also affect our health, and it is time that we step up. I think what US is giving is just a warning. It's not about the amounts, but it is what would happen if we don't take a step.
And when we say what could happen if we don't take a step, which is of course bigger repercussions, are there other donors who fund the Ministry of Health over and above the US?
Yes, we have the Global Fund that also funds HIV, TB and malaria. We have Gavi and other small donors like MSF, Medicines Sans Frontiers. And I think all of them require accountability, and this step is going to actually raise an antenna around how resources are being spent, and if resources are actually reaching the people it is intended to reach. So I think, well, it's going to affect a bigger, overall it's going to affect how the world views Kenya and how resources that are being brought to Kenya are actually looked into.
Okay, and to you, Musoma, when we look at the 5 billion scandal, I'm looking over here at a document that says that there was money that was lost in tender scams in the 2015-2016 fiscal year through diversion of funds, double payment for goods, payments of millions of shillings to phony suppliers, and manipulation of the integrated financial management system. So lack of accountability here, and indeed, you know, the auditing not really up to par. So who should take responsibility for this?
Again, Lillian, a very good question. You see, our credibility has been put to test. And the more we politicize it, the more we look, we appear actually funny politicizing a serious matter as this one. You have said quite truthfully, I mean, what you've just read is quite true, that the Ministry of Health has actually been dodged by scams right, left. And it did not start in the financial year 2014-2015. You remember even in the previous government where we had the Boni Khalwale-led Parliamentary Accounts Committee, when Anyang' Nyong'o was the Ministry of Health back then. You remember the issue of NHIF and the amount of money that was paid to phantom clinics. So Ministry of Health has been dodged by scams back in the day, and nobody has been able to come and put a systemic infrastructure that can actually curtail or cut down what the kind of theft that we've been seeing. Coming to the issue of what we saw in the financial years, in the financial year that you've just mentioned, it was all over. The people that were involved, you know, they allegedly were very close to the to the head of state. Then we never saw anything coming out of it, and I think this is where the United States is going with what they are saying. I mean, your credibility has been put to test, and you have not come out clearly to tell us where these monies have gone. Now, you must realize again, Lillian, that the U.S. aid and the functionalities that they actually work through NGOs, if I may be right, and so when they say that this is going to be affected or due to corruption, there's actually a lot of ripple effect coming from that directive, because you're looking at support staff, you're looking at travel, you're looking at nutritional kitchens. Yes, they've come out to say that the emergency services, you know, the ARV, malaria are not going to be affected, but that still does not play down the fact that if we do not set our house, or if we don't put our house in order in matters of health, then we are not going to lose only from the United Nations, the United States, but other countries are going to follow suit. So again, I put it across that our credibility has been put to test. Question is, what are we going to do as government? I'm liking what I've heard from the U.S. ambassador, saying that they are working, they have been in the process of working with the government to ensure that there are sound, accountable systems that are going to be put in place. Question is this, Lillian, that we all should be asking is, why has it taken this long to an extent that services and funding has been suspended? I think that is what we need to hear.
And the current sitting government, of course, has been dogged with corruption claims. How does this play out in an election year, Gabriel?
Again, you know, we can sit and say, you know, this is something that is just coming out because it's an electioneering year. No, it did not start this year. I think the U.S. aid have been very categorical when they said that this is something we've been following up. The financial years that we've talked about, it was not an electioneering year. And you see, these ministers, when you've been bestowed with such, you know, a hefty amount to run vital services that Kenyans yearn for, and we see the kind of corruption that is emanating from these departments, I think it's sickening, so to say. But again, being an electioneering year does not put the Jubilee administration to sit pretty. I think if the opposition may ride on this, actually they can do more damage. But again, who are they to question the administration when they, even themselves, when they were in power, they were unable to set up infrastructures and what you'd call a good accounting procedures, yet they were also in the same quagmire. So, Lillian, we are looking at a systemic problem that we have been unable to work on, and I think this time around, let's get the help that we need. Let this be a thing of the past. Coming to an electioneering year, I think we are going to hear this more and more before we get to the elections in August. But still, let us not nullify the fact that if we continue Lillian, many countries are going to join in the bandwagon, and I think it's going to leave the Kenyans who yearn for these emergency services, like the HIV and AIDS initiative, like the TB initiative. You're looking at malaria. I think it's going to be a major issue in the re-election of Uhuru Kenyatta. But again, Lillian, there's also something that we should not put on the side. U.S. aid, for the longest time, they've called not only the government but also the NGOs. So really this corruption thing cuts across. So many NGOs have actually been found flat-footed. A spotlight has also been shown on them, given the fact that they have also not practiced what you would call proper and validated accounting procedures.
Right. And Maureen, you're a board member of the Global Fund. Have similar concerns been raised there regarding accountability?
We had initially, when the Global Fund came to Kenya in around 2002, the first recipients of the fund had accountability problems, and those are resources that have not been recovered by the Global Fund up till now. They are on record of the organizations and the amount of money also from the government that was not accounted for, that hasn't been responded to. And I think it's not just about putting systems, it's also about ensuring that these systems are actually adhered to. And in instances where the systems are not adhered to, then there is a institutionalized way of dealing with the individuals in a way that shows that the country is actually serious in ensuring accountability of resources given to us.
And, you know, Gabriel, still on this issue, when we talk about funding from the U.S. government, the Trump administration had cited that it was concerned that its billions, you know, are not serving the interests of the majority, and he did single out Africa. So do you think Kenya is getting caught up in this bandwagon?
Justifiably so, Lillian, justifiably so, and that's another important issue you've raised. Early this year we saw, I think it was February, if I'm not wrong, where the Trump administration saying they were actually going to merge U.S. aid with the State Department. That would mean, in fact, I mean, Donald Trump was not, was very much alive to the fact that he was putting America first. And we all knew when he said that there has been serious misappropriation of funding in many countries in Africa. And if you look at the list of the countries that may miss a lot on the funding, you'll see Kenya is among the African countries that are going to miss in that funding. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because Trump is changing the way and the way they were funding Africa, and the administration, you know, the way it was doing business with Africa. And that is justified. I mean, this is a president who has come in and he wants to change things, and he's allowed to by law. I mean, he stands in principle, and he's saying, you know what, Africa must be given the back now to start actually solving her own problems. And you know, I won't beat him much on that, because just like every other president who's come in before, they've had their own agenda laid out. Is Kenya going to lose much in the grand scheme of things? I'd agree to an extent they are going to lose, but that does not again nullify the fact that we need to put our house in order and get the little that we are going to get from the Trump administration. If failing to adhere to the systems that my good sister is talking about, then that just means that we are digging our own grave much deeper than what we would have expected. You see, already we know there has been presses that have been issued. I was just reading on that website where, you know, where they are talking about the amount of money that they may actually reduce in matters funding in the African continent. And if, you know, this marinates just with what we are going through. If we cannot put our systems in order, albeit the fact that we are losing funding, then we do not even have, or we are not going to create space for other nations who may probably want to jump or fit in the shoes that the Trump administration would have left. I think it's good, first of all, to set our house in order, have the required systems and accountability infrastructure, and then even if you are going to lose funding to an extent, let us, you know, lose, yes, but at least gain favor with other nations who may actually be ready, Lillian, to come and actually solve the problem, even though we are going to lose funding from the United States.
And, you know, in this press release here, the suspension of activities and assistance to the Ministry of Health clearly spells out, you know, the lack of accountability, clearly spells out corruption issues surrounding how funds are being used. So to you, Maureen, how best do you recommend that the Ministry of Health avoid future issues such as these? How can they be more proactive? What would you recommend? How would you recommend that the Ministry of Health handles this issue?
First of all, I would ask that the Ministry of Health recovers the amounts of money that have been lost. That is part one of showing accountability. And secondly, that systems are put in place to ensure that there is a smooth and a clear and a very transparent financial accountability, and that anyone can actually monitor these resources. And Kenya, as many people say, is a middle-income country. Most donor countries are actually exiting out of middle-income countries, and very soon donors are going to transition from our country. And this is not actually helping. This is like adding salt to injury. If already we have problems with accounting for the resources they are giving to us, and yet to some context we don't qualify to even get these resources, because most of them in their overseas development aid, they're only supposed to fund low-income countries. So I think Kenya should step up on that, and we should also demonstrate leadership by investing our own resources towards health and giving counterpart financing to what we are getting from the donors.
And still to you, Maureen, before I get some parting remarks from Gabriel, how regularly do you hold accountability meetings with the ministry? We do know that health is a devolved function, and therefore, even as this report comes out, this press release comes out, we do know that because public health service provision is executed by county governments, the effect of this suspension may not be immediately felt, and of course also from the ministry it might be a little bit difficult for them to keep tabs on exactly how county governments are utilizing some of these funds. So how often do you have accountability meetings with them?
Like, since health is devolved and the Constitution provides for citizen participation, we have seen a few donors who are very transparent in their dealings with the Ministry of Health say how much they've invested, for example, the Global Fund, and regularly they have quarterly meetings to demonstrate how that money is being invested or how it is being used, and therefore that is easy to follow. We are also asking that in future we get transparent investment, we get to know what donors have invested into the health system and into the country. That provides for availability, or it isn't citizen monitoring, so that we are able to actually monitor how the grants are being used. But if USAID and other donors are going to get into private negotiations with the government, then it will be very difficult for us to monitor accountability of what we don't know or how much we don't know is invested. We have seen the PEPFAR grant actually begin to engage civil society and communities in them showing how much they are investing, and so this has been, it's not really very regular, but there's an improvement on how communities and civil society are engaged in knowing how much has been invested. And I think in future, if this continues and it's regularized and systemized, then we are going to actually improve on monitoring and ensure that our government is accountable for the resources invested.
And Gabriel, as we close, looking at Kenya's state of health, now that it is a devolved function, looking at you know, the go-slows from the medics that have dogged this current government, would you say that we were at a better place when health was a national function? Do we find ourselves facing such issues now, even with donors cutting back on funding because of the fact that some of these funds are being handled at county level?
Lillian, whether we move back health into the national government or whether we devolve it, the key issue is to understand that the credibility of these functions must suffice. Failure to which it does not matter where health is going to be. I gave you a case, an instance in 2012 where health was not devolved function, but still there was a lot of theft. A case in point like the NHIF that I've just given you. When we come to the to devolve health, we still are dodged by the very same problems. So really the key cutting indicator here is that there is corruption. There needs to be streamlining of these particular matters in all matters health. I think what we need to learn from this exercise is we cannot continue to doing things business as usual. Liking what my sister has said about PEPFAR, this is where I think the president has taken initiative himself, and he has come to involve civil society. And I think if this is a way of channeling funding to counties, if we know exactly how much is going to each county and what kind of budget they are requiring, because I would tell you from where I'm seated, not all counties actually share within the same health banks. I think some are worse off than the others. So I think this is a collective burden that people must come and sit down and see. How can we, number one, raise the stakes to accountability? Lillian, really it is going to be a slap in the face when people who are actually geared, or people who have been mentioned severally to have been involved in matters corruption, are changed from one department to the other. You saw a good case in point with PS Moragori. People are actually crying foul. And if this letter is emanating from from the such directives that we've seen, somebody moving from one PS position and taken to a more lucrative one in lands, what does that tell you? I think this is where the likes of USAID, the US Embassy, driven programs, are looking at it as a slap in the face. And I think these are the issues we need to address. So really, when we look and we want to compare, was it better when it was in national government, or is it now okay when we are seeing all these strikes, and and each governor is supposed to raise the stakes and be able to direct how matters health are going to function in their own county? If the underlying factor is corruption, Lillian, trust you me, we are not going to see any change.
Many thanks for that. I've been talking to Gabriel Muthuma, who's a governance analyst, and Maureen Morenga, who's a health advocate. This, of course, in line with the fact that the USAID has suspended activities and assistance to the Ministry of Health by cutting back $2 billion health support over corruption claims. We're back with more in the next hour. Stay tuned.